combo. And it might actually prefer having it because it's paired against a matchup where it's probably not that bad against a deck like what we're paired against, which is blue-red-white Delver.
Yeah, the blue-white-red Delver deck we saw be so successful in New Jersey. James Buckingham has his own take on it, which includes 3 Geist to St. Traps in the main deck. Not much changed in the main deck beyond those elements. He tripped into Swords to make room for that.
Yeah, so Punishing Fire obviously good at dealing with cards like Delver Secrets and Stoneforge Mystic.
And Grim Lavamancer.
And Grim Lavamancer, yeah. So let's see how Justin's able to navigate this round. He's gonna play a turn 1 Thoughtseize. Let's see what he has to go after. And ooh, James actually has a Daze to stop it. So Justin's not gonna gain any kind of information.
On the upside, James is obviously a tempo deck, and the fact that his opponent has burned a Daze here means he doesn't really have to worry about his mana getting threatened right on the spot. He's up a land on James, and that's a pretty good spot to be in against these tempo decks.
Oh yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, if I'm Justin, it's not the worst thing ever to have here. If my Tarmogoyf got dazed, I'd be much more angry than if my Thoughtseize got dazed there. So yeah, I agree with you. The fact that James is basically wasting the first 2 turns just pondering, setting up his later draws, I wouldn't say it favors Justin, but I think Justin's probably okay with it.
It's a nice situation for him to be in. Obviously, he doesn't have to worry about Ponder plus Spell Pierce or Delver plus Spell Pierce, things like that. That actually can slow down his development because James has to choose. Do I play a spell or do I hold open counter magic? And he obviously needs to play spells. He has to churn through the deck. He has to convert Ponder into value. Otherwise, it's not anything.
Yeah, it's blue-white-red Delver, similar to just Rug Delver, where it's at its strongest when it can just go turn 1 Delver, and then for the rest of the game, just use its cantrips to kind of smooth out its draws and get that kind of velocity where it's drawing all its counter spells and removals.
One of the things I don't like about the blue-white-red Delver list is it doesn't have Nimble Mongoose or something like Nimble Mongoose to supplement the Delver plan. You don't have that turn 1 threat that you just untap into like Stifle plus Spell Pierce with Daze back up.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
Ice cold every time.
That's the one advantage that the Rug Delver has, I think. I mean, you're gaining a little more power in Stoneforge Mystic, but you're losing 4 1-drops, and obviously being able to play a 1-drop and then just cycle through the rest of your deck and deal with using mana denial and cheap permission spells is obviously very effective. So giving up a little bit, you're giving up some 1-drops, but you're gaining more removal spells and I think a little more power in Stoneforge Mystic package.
Sure. Justin gets to the board with an early Tarmogoyf. James counters with the Tarmogoyf of the blue-white-red Delver deck, Stoneforge Mystic. It plays a very similar role.
It's a very similar role. It's a big, beefy, durable threat. Obviously, it can be dealt with by a lightning bolt, whereas Tarmogoyf can't. But again, against certain decks, being able to get a Jeté even is an extra bonus, especially for a deck like Elves or Death and Taxes.
James goes for the Batterskull. If he can get that down, it'll obviously be a pretty big game. But Jund is a deck that's especially well suited to keeping that from happening. Abrupt Decay and Lightning Bolt and Liliana the Veil can all kill the Stoneforge Mystic. And another Thoughtseize could just strip the Batterskull right out of the hand. So could a Lucky Hymn to Torok.
Yep. So it looks like Justin could have a really good turn here. It looks like he does have a Bolt for that Stoneforge Mystic, and he might actually also have a Deathrite Shaman as well. So let's see how this plays out. Tarmogoyf becomes a 4/5 because there's now instant sorcerer, creature, and land, and James is going to drop down to 16. Justin's going to sack the Bloodstained Mire to search for a land. He's going to just double check what should he go for here. Likely going to go for a Overgrown Tomb, or I'm sorry, a Bayou. This is a Legacy here.
Budget Legacy.
Budget
to be
Legacy.
Fair, Bayou's pretty budget for Legacy.
So Bayou comes into play here, and let's see if we're going to see a Deathrite Shaman, or perhaps a second Tarmogoyf.
Jam a second Tarmogoyf, no fear of the days. I like his Moxie.
I like it. Jamming that Tarmogoyf out there, so he's got 2 4/5 Tarmogoyfs in play. Buckingham doesn't have that many answers to it.
The Taunting Daze off the top of the deck.
Too little, too late there.
On the upside, he might actually be able to convert that Daze after this Tarmogoyf resolve. Now Justin's got to be thinking, well, I know he doesn't have a Daze.
Oh yeah, especially if Justin goes 4th land Bloodbraid Elf, he can daze the Bloodbraid Elf or whatever the Bloodbraid Elf casts. So yeah, certainly
could be worse.
Could be worse, I guess. But again, Justin's deck, it's a tempo deck, doesn't really play cards like Supreme Verdict, so it really relies on sort of out-tempoing its opponent and not caring about Tarmogoyf so much. It does have some number of Swords to Plowshares in his deck, so he does have ways that he can actually kill a Tarmogoyf, but again, it's not. It's a situation where he's facing down 2 Tarmogoyfs and doesn't even have a creature in play. This is not something that a tempo deck like Blue-Red Delver is really prepared to deal with.
Yeah, I think Blue-Red Delver is usually pretty good at handling 1 Tarmogoyf. Between being able to just threaten Stoneforge Mystic or Grim Lavamancer and Lightning Bolt can mess it up pretty good. You can Daze or Force one if you have to,
Exactly.
and then you obviously have access to the swords that you mentioned. But 2 Tarmogoyfs, that's progressively more difficult. It's not like a deck like Miracles or Stoneblade where it has access to swords and Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah.
In order to like really put the hurt on these vanilla creatures, it actually has to fight through them.
Yeah, it has to fight through them, and you also have, and plus you're on the back foot here because Justin's actually just going to commit some other threat potentially to the board now too, and Geist St. Draft, it's a great attacker, but not the best blocker.
No, he does not do well on D.
So let's see, if this is a Bloodbraid Elf, it's actually not necessarily the worst thing for James because of the Geist St. Draft, if it's a removal spell, it can't target Geist. So if it's an Abrupt Decay, that's basically a blank. And he does have a Daze, and like we said, the Daze that he just drew can counter either the Bloodbraid Elf or whatever the Bloodbraid Elf actually cascades into. So
he has a number of nice hits. That's a reasonable one, not an especially spectacular one.
And unfortunately, that is the one that's going to resolve first, not the Bloodbraid Elf. So it looks like he's going to Daze the Bloodbraid Elf, yeah. Yep. And then Thoughtseize obviously resolves.
And I imagine we'll see I guess the Delver. Does he realistically believe that Batterskull is ever coming down? I might take the Batterskull on the off chance the opponent like peels Stoneforge Mystic, chumps with Delver next turn.
Yeah, it depends on what he has in his hand. It looks like he might not have.
I think the Delver's fine.
Yeah, I think the Delver's fine.
Certainly not one of the 2 Spell Pierces. Those
are
doing nothing anymore.
So Justin's going to attack with both Tarmogoyfs now, and James actually has. Actually, you know what? I might have taken the Battle Skirt just because it would have pumped your Tarmogoyfs.
That's a reasonable argument.
And make him 5/5s, 5 power with James at 15.
That's
basically
a good thing to
hits.
point out. That's one of the reasons with Jund it's always important to play a lot of your spells before you attack, especially discard spells.
Mm-hmm.
You can very frequently nab a Planeswalker or something like that. That's usually very difficult to get the pump for early in the game.
Yeah, definitely. So Justin Parnell, James basically wasn't able to really get anything going early on. Was forced to play defense, and again, a deck like Delver not very good against at playing defense. So we're going to go to game 2 here. James will be on the play. What do you think James is going to be doing after sideboard here?
He'll definitely want to bring in that 3rd Swords to Plowshares. That's basically the incentive behind this deck in the first place, is being a tempo deck with access to swords, which kills, basically anything up to and including Tarmogoyf. I think he's not that interested in things like engineered explosives. That's obviously like a pretty good card against decks like Rug, which is another Tarmogoyf deck. But Justin Parnell is playing Jund. It has a lot of different casting costs in it. All of its creatures have different ones. So while it's a reasonable answer to some of them, it's not fantastic. I do really like his Singleton Sword of Feast and Famine. Obviously, Jund has answers to that card in Abrupt Decay, but if you're going to try and stick a card, it's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, he also has Singleton Submerged that seems quite good, and he may be tempted to bring in his Rest in Peace. A lot of people assume Jund means punishing Jund, so that would really sell him on the Rest in Peace. Even if he brings it in, it still obviously turns off Deathrite Shaman and Tarmogoyf, which is totally fine. So I imagine he'll bring in Sword of Feast and Famine, Submerge, and a Rest in Peace, and probably leave the rest at home. Most of it's just Disruption or Counter Magic to supplement what he's already got going on in the main deck.
And looking at Justin's deck list, I actually really like his sideboard plan. Again, he's not a traditional Jund deck, so he doesn't have those Grove of the Burn Willows in order to get back Punishing Fires, which allows him to play slightly more basic lands, which means he can actually have access to Blood Moon in his sideboard. Ooh. So yeah, very saucy sideboard here. He has 3 copies of Blood Moon, which I'd imagine are definitely coming in against a deck like Blue-Red Delver, because they, just like Rug, they don't actually run any basic lands because they just can't afford to. So this is a card that can actually shut down pretty much all of James's deck. He really can't function on only red mana. And we've even been seeing some Rug decks and blue-white red decks in general boarding in Young Pyromancer as a way to sort of not get around Blood Moon, but still function under it. But James doesn't have that in his sideboard. Either way, I think Justin wants to bring in 3 of those Blood Moons. He also has a copy of Umazao Jite in his sideboard.
Miser's Ancient Grudge.
Yeah, and that Miser's Ancient Grudge, which obviously pretty good at dealing with Batterskull as well as your opponent's Jite, so that's probably coming in as well.
Those 5 cards all seem good.
I think those 5 cards are good. The rest of his sideboard, 3 Red Elemental Blast, 2 Golgari Charms, 2 Ensnaring Bridge, and 3 Duress. Don't really think any of these cards are really relevant. I could see potentially bringing him to duress just as a way to sort of steal a Batterskull if he searches for a Stoneforge Mystic. It also is a way to force through your Blood Moon if that is your game plan. But in general, though, I don't think there's many cards he wants to board out. I don't think him to Toric is necessarily that relevant in this matchup. Maelstrom Pulse, probably need to leave it in just as a way to deal with Batterskull. Sylvan Library, probably don't need the Sylvan Library either. So I think maybe those 4 for some combination of Blood Moon, Ancient Grudge, Jitte. Definitely 3 Blood Moon, and definitely the Ancient Grudge probably. Maybe leave the Jitte back in the sideboard.
Sure, okay. That makes a lot of sense to me. To give you guys some background on these players, James Buckingham is actually fresh off, I believe, an Invitational top 8 in New Jersey. He was playing Bant Hexproof. I know in the standard portion of that event he was eliminated by our eventual champion, Eric Smith. In the classic Jund versus Bant Hexproof battle, the classic evil versus evil battle.
Yeah. So yeah, it looks like James, we're being told, came in 6th place at the Somerset Invitational, playing Bant Hexproof in Standard and Shardless Bug in Legacy. And Bant Hexproof, you know, obviously a big fan of Geistesing Traps, gets to play it again here at Legacy. So not too surprising. Very similar type decks, you know, aggro tempo decks.
Justin Parnell is from Roanoke. He's actually one of our many fine employees at Star City Games. He's an assistant manager in the inventory department. He's got a number of close finishes. The weekend of New Jersey, he actually finished in 9th in the Standard Open, I believe, and then could have won into 9th in the Legacy Open and decided to just draw into top 32 instead.
Wow.
Didn't want to get the runner 9th place.
So it looks like both players are okay with their 7-card hand, and James leads with a Flooded Strand into a Tundra. And let's see if he can get that namesake of his deck, Delver of Secrets, into play.
Yeah, I saw a Stoneforge Mystic and a Delver of Secrets at a minimum. I think he also has a Swords to Plowshares, so shaping up to be a good hand. He can obviously answer a turn 1 Deathrite Shaman, which is pretty much the best thing Justin Parnell does on turn 1.
Ooh, it looks like Justin did board in those red Elemental Blasts, so...
I think that's fine. It counters a lot of cards. The trick is, you know, it doesn't counter a lot of the good ones. Although Geistesing Trapped is a pretty big deal, and it's a reasonably effective and efficient answer to that card.
Definitely. So it looks like we're going to get a Thoughtseize here. I love this here because it allows him to take a Stoneforge Mystic potentially. Oh, though looks like James has 2.
Wow.
So,
He probably actually kind of wants to take that Wasteland, but that's not going to happen.
So
facing down 2, I would probably take the Ponder, as he's already got his 2nd equipment.
Yeah.
Are you really that scared of the 2nd Squire?
I think you have a power. Yeah. You have a Wasteland. Yeah, but you're going to be. Yeah, this is going to be a tough situation. I think I agree with you. I think it's reasonable to take the Ponder, but at the same time, if Jitte comes down and just, you know.
I mean, he can shift into the control deck, right, and just lean on Abrupt Decay to answer the Jitte, and then his opponent gets to gain, like, 8 life or something.
But the problem is, if you look at Justin's hand, he doesn't have a lot of mana, and James does have that Wasteland, so
yeah, if Justin's shy on mana, then I think it's a reasonable decision as well. If he only has 1 removal spell, he also might really want to get rid of one of the Stoneforge Mystics, as otherwise, you know, the 2nd copy will still let him get Batterskull.
So Justin, a little happy there that James whiffed on the Delver reveal, but it was a volcanic island, so James is able to cast Wasteland here and not be concerned that he won't be able to cast his Stoneforge Mystic the following turn.
Yep.
So,
Justin wastes right back.
Justin,
wow, that
I like that.
Leaves those Stoneforge Mystics for sure.
Yeah, I like that plan. I'm gonna keep you off of white mana, and don't really care. Ooh.
James winces as he looks at a Grim Lavamancer, but that's a play he can certainly make.
It is a play he can make, but it's still good news for Justin here. Not only does he whiff, but it's not a land. It's not a white land, rather. So Stoneforge Mystic still potentially just stuck in that hand there.
Justin probably going to be burning the Reb on the Delver. You know, he's lasted this long.
Yeah.
We skirted out of there with just a couple points of damage.
Now, how much would you ever consider doing it after the trigger resolves to try to gain a little more information, or are you just playing too much into a card like Force of Will or Daze? You just want to get that Delver off the play.
I think you go ahead and get it. I mean, you have seen all of the cards James has drawn, right? So I guess you can actually.
Oh yeah,
wait.
you know there's a It
was Volcanic Island and Grim
Volcanic
Lavamancer. So yeah, you can actually wait and see what James is going to actually do with the top card of the deck. So.
Yeah, because you're basically just only exposing yourself if the top card is the Daze, right?
Well, I mean, you can still kill it before he draws it.
Yeah.
Just once the trigger resolves, still in upkeep, you just zap it.
So I kind of like gaining a little more information, but Let's see what happens here if just James does draw. Oh, he just draw a Scalding Tarn.
Well,
So
it looks like we're going to get that information anyway. He's going to play Scalding Tarn and Stoneforge Mystic for Batterskull, and the Grim Lavamancer text for 1, because it's certainly not going to be using any mana this turn.
So Tundra comes into play, and rather than shuffle, we're just going to cast that Stoneforge Mystic and then search for a card.
White bordered Brainstorms. All right, I'm shifting gears. We're on Jun's side. We've joined Team Jun.
Ugh. You gotta like those white border brainstorms. It's funny, you can afford dual lands, but you can't get black bordered brainstorms.
I mean, some people, just they like what they like, man. There's nothing.
Hey, whatever floats your boat, buddy.
Transformers 3 was a blockbuster.
No accounting for taste there, I guess. So we're going to have a Stoneforge Mystic and Grim Lavamancer on James' side of the board. And he already has that Jitte, and he just searched out a Batterskull. So, oof.
Justin misses his land drop, gives James that look. Yeah, I know, I'm totally screwed.
This isn't Justin's first rodeo. He understands what's happening here. So Grim Lavamancer comes over for another point of damage. James is glad to just pass the turn back. If this isn't a land, I'd expect a concession here. And that's exactly what we get.
Well, it looked like Justin might rally from a pretty strong start on James's end. Those tempo decks can come out fast and furious, but break those land drops and they will very easily take you down.
So James Buckingham on the back of Stoneforge Mystic and Batterskull manages to even things up, and we're going to Game 3 here with Justin Parnell and his Jun deck being on the play. Again, you mentioned that Pyroblast came in here. Do you think that maybe he would more do that for being on the draw, or do you think that's still a card he's willing to have on the play because maybe Bloodbraid Elf is likely to come out now a turn later? Does he change up his plan because he's in the draw?
It's kind of an interesting question, actually. It's obviously a very good solution to turn 1 Delver. You can get it through a daze much quicker than a number of your other removal spells, which is worthwhile. But it's possible, if I'm bringing in Red Blast, I'm actually more interested in a thing like Hymn to Torok. If I can hymn them and then Red Blast their Brainstorms and things like that can happen, that's a pretty easy way to take down a deck like this.
Yeah.
The issue being obviously Stoneforge Mystic is a big problem when you're doing things like that, and obviously that's exactly what we saw happen. They just rolled over to a Stoneforge Mystic. Obviously he was also mana screwed, but if the Red Blast was another card, could have made a difference.
I just wonder how, I really like the Blood Moon. So
yeah,
I like the Blood Moon plan. I'm hoping to see that be effective here for him. Obviously, he was just very mana screwed, so that was never really a factor. But I really like his Blood Moon plan, and I would really just play into that because that is so backbreaking against a deck like Delver.
Yeah.
And again, he has so many removal spells, so I think as long as he's able to just make his mana drops, and this is, I think, just something we saw in the prior match with Jun. If they're able to make their mana drops, I think they're kind of advantage against Delver because they have plenty of removal, and they also have these back-breaking spells like Blood Moon that can really put just end the game on Delver's side. So I kind of like Justin's position still, even though it's he lost game 2. I think if he's able to just at least make his land drops, I think he should be fine.
Yeah, the biggest issue in that game also came from him getting wastelanded. That was actually a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And he does have basics to search out, so if he can get a slightly fetch heavier hand or be able to play around the presence of Stifle more successfully, he can set up a mana base that's significantly less vulnerable to the disruption that James is running, and that also obviously improves the Blood Moon. So it all kind of is building to the same point.
Yeah, and not only that, but now with him being on the play, he can easily get the draw of turn 1 Deathrite Shaman, which means James, the potential of James going turn 1 Wasteland you is, not nearly as impressive. And now Justin can actually go Wasteland you and play a 2-drop.
Yep.
So being able to play a Deathrite Shaman on turn 1, a huge advantage for the Jun player. Because I really don't think that even a Delver of Secrets on turn 1 from James isn't nearly as impressive as a Deathrite Shaman.
Depending on what Jun follows with, yeah, that can definitely be true. It can also obviously fuel a turn 2 Blood Moon, which is serious business.
That is serious business. I don't know. They're running that into a daze. Oof.
Hey man, no gamble, no future.
No gamble, no future. Oh, I would love to see a turn 2 Blood Moon.
I've noticed a startling consistency. I never have it, so theoretically, my opponents at least some of the time aren't going to have it.
Yeah, so to give you a little update on the other players in the room, some of the X and ones this round. This is round 7, so we're almost at the elimination rounds here. Morgan Chang, I believe he's playing Elves. He's X and 1. Reed Duke, the People's Champion, playing Elves again. He is X and 1. Looks like Brian Brandowan. We saw him on the feature match. He's playing Sneak and Show. He's still X and 1. Van Fleet, Jim Davis, Cook, AJ Carrigan, Ben Friedman. All those players still X and 1 and in contention for the top 8.
Adam Van Fleet in contention to run it back from the Standard Open. Jerry might be quaking.
There you go. He was up early this morning, and you know,
hasn't slowed down. Said he came here to play Legacy in his winner's interview. So just played the Standard because he was here.
Yeah,
he came for the Legacy.
Hey, if I could win the Standard, and that was just an afterthought. Can you imagine what I can do in Legacy?
Yeah. Certainly could pay off. This game underway. Justin fetching on turn 1. We'll see if he grabs a duel or a basic. Oh, he skips by those basics. Went for his duel. He is on the play. That makes him significantly less vulnerable to a lot of the mana disruption James can throw at him.
Especially if we see a Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, and especially if he's going to play Deathrite Shaman, then this makes even more sense.
So, it looks like he does have everyone's favorite 1-drop. Arguably the greatest 1-drop.
James, here it is. It's in play. I got one.
Probably the best 1-drop created in the past 5-6 years. Actually, I can't even remember another one. Yeah, I can't even remember the last time I was this excited over a 1-drop.
Oof. It's an incredible card.
So let's see. Does James have the Lightning Bolt?
Volcanic Island
comes into play. Tap. He's not messing around.
It's either Bolt or Grim Lavamancer.
Or it could be Ponder. Could be Ponder, Brainstorm.
I don't feel like we're Ponder.
No,
it's a
Lightning Bolt.
He has 2 bolts. Ooh. And he brought in the Engineered Explosives, I believe. That's what that is.
So, Engineered Explosives, if he's, could be a proactive way to deal with Blood Moon if he could just, if he's, has the foresight.
Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and put this on 3 to kill all those Lilianas.
So.
And, I see a Blood Moon. I saw one.
Decides to Wasteland though, so
black bordered.
A little away from.
These guys are playing some magic.
So it looks like James drew a Stifle, so that can be a land destruction spell, and there it is. There's a Verdant Catacombs for Justin. So if Justin's not careful, he could expose himself to the Stifle.
He'll need to tread carefully here. Don't crack it. Yeah, if you're gonna crack it, you at least want to wait until James's upkeep to do it. Unless you think you're going to deploy a game-winning spell here, but that doesn't seem like what you want to do. Your opponent is behind. You've got lands. He might not. Let's just slow it down.
Yeah, given it's a tough spot here. Justin making sure he wants to target the Bayou. Okay.
Not his own Tundra.
Yeah. Let's see here. Is Justin going to go for it? Justin needs to be patient.
Do it.
You can't go for it. You don't want to thin your deck out either. Yeah, why would you want to thin your deck out of lands?
His hand's full of reactive cards with the exception of the Blood Moon. And I think he just wants to sit here for a while until James has a threat. He's actually in a fine spot, and as soon as James taps out for one, then he can fetch, get the mana he needs to kill the threat, and restore the board to equilibrium.
Yeah, and this is the... oh, wow. So James drew another Wasteland. So Justin... Basically, he does have basic lands that he can go for, but he's going to really need to rip through. If the top 3 cards of his library are lands, I think he's in good shape.
He cracks, and it looks like it's getting stifled.
So yeah, it's stifled, but he has the other Verdant Catacombs, so he can actually crack it now. Oh, he chose not to. Because he does have basics. He has 2 swamps and 2 forests in his deck.
The issue is he does not have a way to get red mana. That's basic. And that's a big problem because his hand is very red. He has the Blood Moon, he has bolts. He's in trouble.
Does not have an answer. Does not have the Pyroblast for Geisha Draft, and there's just another Blood Moon. So this is basically the second round in a row where we've seen Jun just get annihilated by Wastelands and Stifles and really not able to cast any of the spells in their hand. And now he does have Liliana as a potential answer to Geisha Draft, but that is far away from coming into play.
Yeah, Justin getting a little ribbing from a spectator likely there, retaliating as he is wont to do.
So yeah, James had the perfect answers to everything. He had the Lightning Bolt for the Deathrite Shaman. He had one Wasteland. He had a second Waste. He still has a second Wasteland. He had a Stifle for the Verdant Catacombs trigger. So yeah,
James gets in for 6 with his Geist. Refuses to use the Angel Tokens art. Prefers his Pokemon.
So let's see here. We're basically going to have runner, land. And even then, they'd have to be basics because there is a wasteland in play.
And even then, James would also have to just have air.
Yeah.
So none of those things are true. None of them are happening. In fact, James's hand is still pretty good. He has another bolt and a swords, I believe.
James now has Justin on a 2-turn clock, so I don't believe there's any outs for Justin here. And he just drew a stifle for the Verdant Catacombs.
That'll do it.
Blue, white, red Delver is looking to be victorious over Jund. Delver beats Jund 2 rounds in a row. Doesn't matter if there's it doesn't matter if there's white in the deck or green in the deck. Just doesn't matter. So
goes for the Wasteland of the Verdant Catacombs and has the stifle. Justin's like, yep, I've had enough.
Enough.
Good.
Enough is enough. So Justin Parnell, second round in a row, we saw Jund really stumble under mana. Not without good reason. I mean, the Delver players do have the stifles in the Wasteland. That is part of their plan. So Justin Parnell unfortunately falls to 5-2 and is now out of top 8 contention effectively. Whereas James Buckingham with blue, white, red Delver moves up to 6-1, and along with the other players that we mentioned, like Morgan Chang, Reed Duke, still in contention for that top 8.
Yeah, James is a pretty strong player. See him frequently appearing in, playing for top 8 on the Open Series. He obviously has an invitational top 8 to his name. He even top 8'd the PTQ that I top 8'd this couple weekends ago as well.
Back in Baltimore or Delaware?
Delaware, yep. He lost in the finals of that PTQ.
Wow.
Playing Bant Hexproof. Lost to Bant Hexproof.
Bant Hexproof, everyone's favorite deck.
Yeah.
So,